Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I'll be taking a look at Grid Observer by Pat Aulisio, put out by YDC. I think this is something that Pat gave to Sean, or the publisher gave to Sean, and Sean included it in a care package of books for me to review and help get this stuff out here. Really cool book that's kind of like in between Moebius's designs for Tron. Like a lot of this motorcycle on a grid stuff reminds me of Tron. Then there's also a like strong helping of Yuichi Yokoyama vibes. Like you can kind of see in these images here the shapes and the ways the black's used and the strange characters. That reminds me of Yokoyama Yuichi's work, like Plaza and books like that. And also, I think Antoine Koss is someone else who comes to mind, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Antoine Koss's writing. I really like the art, and I see a bit of that in here as well. I'm sure there's plenty of other artists that are influencing this, but those are like the three that come to mind. There are all these pretty silent stories, pretty abstract. It's a very surreal narrative. It relies on a lot of like poetics of form type of stuff where you just have formal transitions, like this thing floating up and splashing all of the grotesqueness down. I like that there can be these changes in texture as well, from these more textural heavy uses of texture and black to the more gridded out stuff. Another reference that, like, I don't think this is necessarily an artist that this artist is looking at, but looking at Paul Kirchner's kind of psychedelic dope writer stuff, some of the use of these like geometric forms and things, bit of like the Kirby crackle, some of the weird Ditko-isms in here as well. So a really interesting just visual mix of things that this character gets to go around and go on this psychedelic journey as they're sent in basically to check out the grid, whatever that is. This is broken up into chapters or short stories. They kind of flow one from the other. Like here you have the characters still assessing the grid, and then they jump into it. Really love this image here. This one, I know exactly what it is I'm looking at, but also like I'm having a hard time imagining like how you would plan that out, what kind of tools you would need to measure that all perfect. But really beautiful like tube there using contorted perspective lines. Some more like the really fun type of images you get in here. These type of things too I remember from Eddie Campbell's Bacchus. So I just see like I don't think any of this is necessarily being referenced, but it's like building up this own abstract vocabulary that I've seen types of things like this elsewhere, but it becomes its own thing in the hands of Pat Aulisio here. So really, really fun book. Really like this pattern here. Really like as this character like comes down in a fireball and crashes back into the grid, like these big kind of Archon type entity characters throughout, and just all of the wild psychedelia. It's pretty much just a visual delight book for me. And then at the very end, you get a bit of dialogue to give some context. And this character that's been traveling the whole time asks this person that he finds, "Why are you here?" "I'm from here." "Well, I came from the void. What do you what do you do there?" "Nothing." "Sounds boring." "Not really. What do you do in the grid?" "Math." "Now that sounds boring." And that's okay, all right. And then they kind of move on from that. So there's a little bit of information here, but not much to go on. And I think that's perfect for what this book is. And it just leads up to like this kind of MC Escher thing at the end. The other thing that I kind of took from the book is that as you work through the book, some of the tricks that are played seem to be more reliant on like 2D, 3D, and then stepping out into time. So there does seem to be some kind of dimensional travel in here. Even though everything's like pretty 3D-ish all the way out, you have stuff like this where you have the orthogonal perspective, and you have the kind of faux perspective, and then you have things opening up into like a more realistic perspective, and then some things that to me suggest jumping out into time. So that might be part of it, moving into these higher dimensions. moving off of the grid into higher dimensions, I think is part of what this book is about. But that's just my interpretation of what's going on in the book, and it's a book that's obviously very open to interpretation. So a very cool little book. Thanks to whoever gave this to us. I'm assuming it was Pat Aulisio. And this is from Yeah Dude Comics. You can get it from $15, and it's a gorgeous little book to flip through. And I'd be curious, anyone else who's read it, I'm curious to hear what you took away from it. Plaza by Yokoyama Yuichi. This is translated by Ryan Holmberg and is very large for a manga, so that's a really cool feature of this book, this standard manga size. And this is just a 200 some odd page representation of what Yokoyama Yuichi thinks of the Carnival parade, and he's just made this like relentlessly loud and rhythmic book that pushes all kinds of amazing boundaries of what comics and manga are, and we could not recommend this book more.